Hello and welcome to the Wellness Plus podcast. I'm your host, Karina Rachel, and I'm joined today by Sandra Foreman, founder of the Spa in Me LLC. She is also a lawyer, a yoga instructor, a self-care coach. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, I am fascinated by your background in health law. I would love to learn a little bit more about how you got into that area of law and what it entails. But because you have such a variety of different kind of areas of expertise, I was wondering if you could just maybe talk in general about health and wellness professions. For anyone out there who's wanting to kind of go into this field, so to speak, health and wellness, maybe just kind of like laying out some of the different options that they have in terms of careers and ways that they can help people.
Right. And there are many different ways to get involved with health and wellness. And so I think the first thing that one should consider is whether or not they want to work with people. Do they want to write? Are they a writer and want to do more of an analysis of a health and wellness situation? I think those are the first things that people should consider, because working with people is definitely different than, having time to sit and think and put your thoughts on paper. So I think that's the first step in terms of, what type of thinking about the work situation that a person would want.
Like, do you want to be seeing patients
Right.
every day or, kind of maybe more of like the back end, so to speak, where you're not actually one-on-one with patients every day.
Exactly. And then, maybe just thinking about the type of work setting. Is one more interested in working for a company or maybe a small business? Are they wanting to work for a nonprofit organization, government agency? Those are the types of things I think are important for a person to consider in deciding where in the health and wellness field they also want to work.
Right. And then can you talk a little bit about how you ended up in health law and what exactly all of the different, certifications you have there?
Right. It was really organic, because my first attorney position was at State Counsel for Offenders, which is part of Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And there was an attorney, my coworker. She had all these pro bono cases representing veterans. And I questioned her about, what are you doing? And she told me about a national organization which still exists. I've been practicing law for 22 years. So this was when I first became licensed. She introduced me to the area of veterans law. She took pro bono cases with the National Organization of Veterans Consortium. That's an organization which will train attorneys to represent veterans in pursuing their service-connected benefits. So they represent veterans at the highest appellate level in a veterans court, which is the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. So in that program, they will assign a mentor attorney, someone who has practiced veterans law for a number of years. They've already assessed the case, and they take cases where they feel that a veteran can actually receive benefits, that they have a viable claim, and they've gone through the administrative review. So I would represent veterans for about, I did that for 10 years.
Wow.
I would help them with their appeals to the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. And they were the best clients. They were so very appreciative of the work that I did for them, because they know, unfortunately, in that area of disability law, there are very few attorneys who practice it. During the time that I practiced, there were really not very many. Now there are more attorneys who represent veterans and assisting them in obtaining their veterans disability benefits, but still the number is very small.
Wow.
So that's how I got started. And from there, I took Social Security disability cases, and I would help and help claimants obtain their disability benefits. I also was the director of advocacy for Covenant House, Texas, and that's an international organization with 22 sites, I believe, that houses homeless youth from age up to the age of 21. And so when I had that position, I was introduced to the aspect of public health law. So it was more of an advocacy policy type position. And so in that position, I realized I wanted to get more involved in health law. And that's an umbrella term because there are so many different areas of health law. But I went back to law school. There is the highest law degree that one can obtain after the JD and after becoming a licensed attorney is what's called a Master of Laws. It's also called an LLM. I obtained that at the University of Houston, which has an amazing health law program. And so after that, I worked more in disability law work and correctional health care is another area, and also dealing with insurance issues. So, yeah.
Yeah, insurance claims. Must be a huge area of the law, right?
Right. That's a huge area of health law.
Can you maybe just, because I really have no knowledge of health law,
Right.
can you kind of break it into the, I guess, different categories, so to speak?
Right. There are a number of areas in health law. Like I said, that's really just, an umbrella term, like medicine is an umbrella term. But there, is the area of disability law, where maybe disability benefits, helping people obtain their benefits, Social Security disability, veterans disability, long-term care insurance could go under that as well because that's dealing with disability issues. You also have health insurance issues, which there are different types of health insurance. So maybe helping either the insured or helping the provider or helping the provider, meaning the healthcare professional, or maybe working on behalf of a hospital or the insurance company itself. So, there's that component. There is, when I went through the LLM program, my interest at the time was really in the area of immigration, the health side of immigration, because in immigration, you're also dealing with health law issues, such as a person who wants to come to the United States to obtain a medical procedure, or you have different health professionals that work on certain visas in the U.S. So that's another component of health law. If someone has an interest in immigration, but they want to merge it with health law, then that's another way to do it.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah. And there's also the area of still disability, but more maybe disability discrimination issues, such issues that may arise under the Americans with Disabilities Act, are, that's another area in which people could maybe get involved. There's also maybe the health policy, health advocacy route, because there are a number of, you have health professional associations, or you also have certain organizations like the American Cancer Society, just maybe different nonprofits. And so the policy route is another, it's not maybe health law per se, it's more policy oriented, but still, to me, it's still, legal. So that's another way to get involved if someone wants to work more in the nonprofit sector, but they have this interest in health law issues. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I've thought a lot about, when you look at the different policy around things like school lunches or, just, getting, I guess, a little bit more into like farming or whatever. I don't know if this necessarily goes towards health, but, they subsidize all of the really unhealthy crops for us, corn and soy and the things that we know that, especially when they become so highly processed, which most of those ingredients do, these are like really not the foods that we need to be eating, yet they're subsidized by the government. So I've always had this kind of interest in like, man, well, what if you could shift so that they were actually subsidizing like organic farming, healthier foods, getting, community gardens and things like that. So I've always kind of had a little bit of like interest in that area. So that would be kind of in that policy.
Right. That's more policy, but it still could be, still dealing with legal issues because there is the Food and Drug Administration. There's like the rule-making component where you have attorneys who are involved in that, or you may have an attorney who is with a law firm and they assist with commenting on certain rules because before rules were adopted, they have to be proposed. So, there is that component too. It's more, it still is legal, but some people may think of it as more of an advocacy perspective, but there is that food and food law. I mean, that's another area of health law because, food is important for our health needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so for somebody who's maybe on the track, to becoming a lawyer or something like that, do you have any recommendations you would give? Or I know you had mentioned that sometimes people will contact you, students who are either in college or in a law program, and be like, what are some of the questions that they ask?
Right. They do ask about, what is health law? And because current law students approach me and have questions, one thing I do tell them that a growing area of law, which, to me it's, health law, but also there's privacy and security issues. And you can merge the two by maybe any company now, they need to have privacy attorneys on staff. And so you could maybe work at a health-related company or organization dealing with, the security issues between, so that if there is a breach of certain information, there is that component, and there's the merger of the health issues, health information that is accessed, but you're also dealing with the growing area of information law.
Yeah, I definitely love that kind of joining the two worlds together. Are there any other questions that you get typically?
They will ask sometimes they'll ask for guidance on what types of companies, and so I do try to give them examples. You could work for really any company is going to have an attorney on staff, but I'll point them to maybe health companies that sell maybe shoes or clothing in the health area, sporting companies, that type of thing. If they're more if their interest is more of an active, if they're active in fitness, I'll try to steer them toward those types of companies. Athletic organizations hire attorneys. So I try to give them a broad view because sometimes, if you're just starting, you're not thinking that broadly because they're just focused on getting out of law school. They want to start, but, they're not ready yet.
Right. Yeah, and we were actually talking, before this video that a lot of times the fear around doing something new or like you want to do something but you don't know what it is or you don't know where to start, like that fear is actually way bigger than the thing itself or whatever. So just kind of getting some confidence to know that you are on the right path and that you're like headed in this right direction, like that really goes a long way towards helping that big fear feel a lot smaller.
Right. And a lot of law students now, or really college students too, they want more of a work-life balance. So, they're not really looking, a lot of them are not looking at working at firms where they have to bill like excessive number of hours. They want more balance in their lives. So that's why I think they're seeking guidance on, they're wanting direction on, other opportunities that are available outside of the law firm life. There are small law firms that people can go work for after law school. And in law school, you can also intern in the summertime. So those are possibilities too.
Right. What kind of internships or anything did you do when you were in law school?
I'm trying to remember. I would intern at Legal Aid here in Austin. I did internship at a transportation agency. I went to law school in Cleveland, Ohio, so I internship at a transportation agency there. So I'm like, that's not what I want to do.
So then you kind of discovered that you wanted to do something a little more like health and wellness and helping people.
Yeah, it when you try anything, you realize maybe quickly or slowly whether or not it's for you. So for me, it doesn't take long.
How funny. And then can you talk a little bit about what you're primarily doing now?
Right.
Like the type of legal work that you're doing.
Mainly now I am focused on insurance issues. So that's a big part of what I do, health insurance and Medicare supplement, long-term care, that type of thing.
And then are you representing the insured or the insurers?
The government agency, that regulates the insurance.
Wow. And then do you like that? Would you recommend that kind of work to people? Or
for people who, I find Medicare supplement and long-term care issues very exciting. So that's something else that a person could, they can go the government route at the local level, city government, because, city usually has different healthcare issues that they're dealing with, or at the county level. Then you have the state and the federal government. Those are other governmental options for a person to consider.
And then this may be a just completely off-the-wall question, but for somebody who, might ask, well, what path would I take, in order to have the most effect or the most benefit on, changing policy or improving people's lives or something like that?
That's a difficult one because I think, again, since health is so broad, I think a person would need to determine, okay, what are you primarily interested in? Are you interested more on the provider side, or do you have more of an interest on the person and their ability to access health care? Is your interest maybe in international issues where people maybe can come to the U.S. and access a medical procedure that they can't get in their own country? So it depends on really primarily what their interests are, because there are so many different directions they could go.
Right.
Yeah.
And then are there any other professions that you want to talk about? I think it's really interesting that you, from, background of a lawyer, ended up, taking yoga teacher training.
Right.
Now you've become a self-care coach. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about that?
Well, another opportunity, because I also have, with the veterans law, it's basically appellate writing, meaning there's a lot of writing. So you're going to court, but you're going to court in terms of you're making your arguments on paper. And then the ultimate decision is based on, both the brief written on behalf of the veteran and then the brief written on behalf of the Veterans Administration. So because I have a writing background, one thing I have considered, I haven't done a lot of it yet, is freelance writing. So someone who has an interest in writing, they could maybe write articles for health and wellness publications. That's definitely there's an art to it in terms of how you pitch publications and how editors contact you, but that's another opportunity as well.
Right.
Yeah, and get to see your name in magazines, and I think
Yeah.
that's always exciting.
Yeah.
And more companies now hire content writers for their social media. So that's something that a person could do as well. They could become a content writer for a company for their blogs or for their social media. You know, they could do that type of thing. And some companies even have their own magazines now.
Right.
So yeah, those writing opportunities are also available.
Very cool. So in the previous podcast, we had kind of talked about self-care and burnout. And I feel like that is a very, here where we're kind of talking about law and encouraging people, different potential careers in law. Do you want to speak a little bit about burnout in terms of what you experienced and what you
Right.
learned for all of the people out there listening who hopefully aren't burned out yet, how they can keep from kind of taking that path and ending up feeling
Right.
so overwhelmed?
What I learned is that I reached burnout because I did not do anything for myself. In college or law school, primarily I focused on just studying and getting to the next level of, of schooling and then career. I just didn't know any other way because that wasn't something that was discussed or even at the top of my to-do list. I just didn't make myself a priority. And then married, I had kids, and I was just very robotic. Husband, kids, work, start over. So,
Right.
but as my kids got older and they didn't need me as involved in their lives, and just reaching burnout in terms of just feeling mentally and physically exhausting and wanting to do more, I started just work. That's when I dealt with burnout and realized I needed to find something that I enjoyed doing, which, because I didn't know where to start, was an exploration process. It took really a number of years before I could figure out what I enjoyed. And so what I would suggest to listeners is in order to live a more well-rounded life, it's important to think of yourself and try to do something just for you, even if it's at home, just making yourself a priority, maybe by sitting still or going outside and walking around, but just find something that a person enjoys doing, and that could be their thing, because we all need to take a time out, and we can't be there for everybody else if we're not taking care of ourselves.
So true.
Yeah, so I really had to, I had to learn that on my own. And during my exploration process of a number of years, what I found that appealed to me were health and wellness activities. So yeah, that's how I got there. It's like I had the health law background, and eventually I became passionate about health and wellness activities and self-care practices.
And then you actually became a yoga teacher.
Yes.
Even though you don't actually teach. Do you teach yoga?
No, I
very
don't.
much,
I
or-
don't teach. During the time I discovered yoga, I had been taking it for about maybe a year, and I thought, well, I want to go deeper into it, and I may eventually write about yoga. And at that time, I was thinking I would write about yoga retreats in different destinations, spas. So that was my thinking, and so I completed the yoga teacher training and was really enlightening, because I learned a lot about the history of yoga and the different types of yoga. So I'm glad that I took it. So, that's another route that people can take. Is there are so many alternative health careers, or even if people just want to keep their day job and just do something different on the weekends, those are things that people can do.
Right.
I remember, so I did the yoga teacher training. I also completed part I didn't finish. I want to go back. It's just life got in the way. I completed a third of a clinical herbalism program because I still am into herbs, but I've met a number of clinical herbalists, and I've met a clinical aromatherapist. So, there are a lot of different alternative health careers out there that people can choose to,
Right.
Do it on the weekends, and they still have their day job, can still incorporate it into their lives.
Right. Well, I think it's just so, when you talk about, self-care as a topic, it's kind of, it's not as clear as being like, oh, I'm going
Right.
to go for a run or I'm going to go for a swim. You have a really clear vision of like what that entails. And so for the word self-care, I think sometimes it's confusing,
Right.
But it's like, hey, if you're making time to go to yoga class or to go do this other thing you enjoy or to go, get a massage or, do something that is like just for you,
Right.
but then at the same time, we feel so much pressure to do more and sleep less and all of these things that it's like making time to do something that's just for ourselves,
Right.
Tends to, not always get the priority. Do you have any, I guess, advice in that area for people, making time for taking care of yourself?
I would say start small. Don't go, from 0 to 100. Maybe just start doing something at home for yourself. Maybe watching, on a Saturday, spend a day watching comedy shows or read a book you've been wanting to read for a while and haven't read it, Spend time lounging, hugging your dog or cat, those types of things are also a form of just focusing on yourself, and you're caring for yourself. So that's something very small, very minor that we could take time out to do, I think.
Right.
And then just maybe doing something outside of the home if a person wants. It's something that they can add eventually, but I would just go about it in a gradual way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on like the starting small, little tiny baby steps, because it can feel really overwhelming
Right.
when, it feels like a lot. So, I'll often just recommend people like 3 minutes a day of stretching. No more,
Right.
no less, 3 minutes, because, if it's too big of a chunk of time, it feels overwhelming.
Right.
And so just getting people like into the habit of taking that time to slow down and,
Exactly.
Stretching, meditating, doing yoga, however you want to spend that time, but that, you start making a habit of like doing it every day.
Yeah.
Or, like you said, once a week that you go and take an hour or something to just do something for yourself. Definitely, talking about some of the different professions that we've talked about and all these different legal professions, there's a lot of stress and pressure associated with those things. So it almost creates even more of a need to, make sure that you're taking time to just like slow down and relax and be good to yourself.
I would like to talk retreat planning is something that a person can do. So I have an upcoming, the Spa and Me has an upcoming retreat. The Spa and Me is the company that I started. And it's the first one. And I have taken about 8 to 9 months to plan it, because for me, what has helped is to attend women's retreats. And I wanted to offer that to other women, because the first thing is that we don't give ourselves permission. I think, giving yourself permission is the first big step to do something for yourself. And so this retreat is one day. It's in Dripping Springs. It's from 8 to 5. And the whole purpose of the retreat is of course, for women to relax. But I want to introduce them to self-care modalities a few that have worked for me, so that when they return home, they can easily implement them. And so at the retreat, we will have an acoustic guitarist. You can always incorporate music into your life. And I find music to be very soothing, and that's an instrument that I really enjoy listening to when I just want just to relax. We'll have nutritious food. It's all vegetarian. Breakfast, lunch, morning, afternoon snack. And we will have a journal writing facilitator, something that I find very helpful for me when I feel like I'm just thinking of too much and have too much going on, is to write in a journal. And so I will have Jenny Guy is a journal writing facilitator here in Austin, and she's going to teach women how to journal. I mean, it's writing, but people have a hard time with the concept of how do you journal. So she's going to talk about that. And then we'll have one breakout session, and the women will choose between either a cooking competition with the venue owner, who is an amazing cook, or attending a yoga nidra session in a beautiful barn on site. It's at Onion Creek Kitchens at Juniper Hills Farm is the location. And yoga nidra is an ancient yoga practice. There's no movement. It's focused on guided sleep meditation. So Anna Pilar Cruz is teaching yoga nidra. She is an amazing yoga teacher here in Austin. So she'll talk about the history of yoga nidra, the benefits of it. It's really helpful for people who have trouble sleeping. It's used in a number of Veterans Administration facilities for veterans who have trouble sleeping because of numerous conditions that they're dealing with.
Certainly.
And so she'll teach that. And then the last session is with Amy Suchino, who is an ecotherapist. And ecotherapy really makes the connection between nature and therapy. So basically, it's teaching people how to go outdoors more. There's a problem with nature deficit disorder. So
Wow.
she introduces the concept that nature in itself is healing. So she will talk about ecotherapy, and then she'll lead a meditative walk to the donkey corral that's on site, and so we can spend time with animals, because being around animals is also healing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so how did you become a retreat coordinator, or I'm not sure what you call that, but
Well, like I said, I started attending retreats with, for me personally, just on my own, I would go to women's retreats. But even before that point, I would, my husband, myself, and our two sons would go to family retreats. And so as they got older, they didn't really want to go to those anymore. And then I found out about women's retreats. The same Pine Cove is where we would go for the family retreats. But I found out that Pine Cove had women's retreats. And so it started in my hometown. We would go to one in Columbus, which is not far from Austin. But so I started going to women's retreats. So because I've been going to retreats for so long, I know what I like about them.
okay.
And then I did actually go through a training on retreat planning with a company, Wanderlust Entrepreneur. A former physician actually operates that program.
Okay.
She's a retreat planner now and a retreat planning coach. So I went through that before I started planning for this retreat.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Retreat planning. Are there any other health and wellness professions that you want to talk about?
Well, there is, coaching. I have completed a health coaching program, but for me, what I'm going to do is offer self-care coaching in the form of a podcast after the retreat. It's called, it's what my company, The Spy Me, but the name of the podcast is Dear Cousin Kay. And so my middle name is Kay. Okay. So it's an opportunity for people to write letters anonymously to Dear Cousin Kay regarding any self-care issue that they're dealing with. And Dear Cousin Kay will respond to the anonymous letter writer in her podcast.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That sounds fascinating.
Thank you. And I have actually started receiving letters, so I'm eager to tape those episodes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe let me in on any of the questions that you've received?
Yeah.
Or?
Some of the question, a couple of the questions I received deal with sleep deprivation, and also how, as a mother, how do we release the guilt that is felt when wanting to make more time for yourself. So those are two of the issues that I've received letters about.
Yeah. And just as, a mother and a very successful career woman,
Yeah.
can you speak to that a little bit? Like, how do you handle that, not only work-home balance, but family?
Right. Well, with releasing the guilt, that is something I definitely struggled with in the beginning because I never made time for anything that interested me. I was interested in what my kids were doing, but just like my own thing, I just never did that. And just the fact of knowing that I was carving time out, I'm thinking I'm carving time out from the family, but really it was like just carving just a piece of my own personal time to focus on something just for me. It took a while for me to get there where I just, didn't feel guilty about it anymore. But what I realized is that when I participate in activities that are pleasing and pleasant for me, I'm more pleasant to be around. And I'm able to, I'm happier actually. And so it creates a more positive environment for everyone in my household and for me to have the energy to give to other people.
Right.
And on the sleep issue, I just got to the point later in my career where I just stopped taking work home. So I had to go through the process of realizing I couldn't, it was part of the burnout, I couldn't work all the time.
Right.
And I couldn't take all these, because I would take, in addition to work, I would take a lot of pro bono cases. So I just had to figure out how I could make more free time for myself. And so that meant, not taking work home on the weekends and not maybe pick one volunteer activity and just do that.
Right.
So I started to do those things. And then with that, I felt like I could sleep more. And that's something sort of hard to say that, I felt like I earned the right to sleep. But, I had to take some things away to realize that I needed to sleep so that I would feel more energetic. And, sleep as part of your self-care, as part of your health. It's important for both. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And just in our general reactions with people, how patient are we? How can we kind of face stressful situations and hopefully not get completely turned into a stressful mess or whatever, like that. Sleep and self-care and taking time to relax and taking time to do things you enjoy. I mean, that's so important for making sure that your relationships with, the husband, your family, much less your coworkers and clients and all of this, is as good as it can be because you're in the best place, that you can be at. And it's you're definitely right. There is so much, pressure on us to do more. That like that one element of making time for ourselves and making time to maybe sit around and do nothing.
Right.
Like, just sit with yourself and be breathing or be relaxing or be doing yoga or whatever it is. But yeah, getting out of that kind of hamster wheel for a little while, it's almost a little scary. You know, like there's maybe like comfort in the always being running around and always being pushing yourself to the edge and always, being like feeling like you're 5 steps behind in work or whatever. And then so, it's almost a challenge in a way to get out of that just because we do get so comfortable in that space. To try and like do something different or
that's what I dealt with because that's all I knew for so long. And the thought of doing anything different than that was very paralyzing for me because that's all that I knew. And so just getting to the point of doing things outside of your routine is a scary first step to take. But and I don't remember. I think I took it slowly, and I said, well, let me just try this activity. I would try so many different things, and then it just became a challenge to try to find something that would, hold my attention.
Right.
Because it took a while. But it's what I needed to do, and I think I know that I learned more about myself in the process. Yeah, so it was great.
And then fast forward to
Right.
now, you have so much going on and so many
Right.
different just kind of areas of expertise where you're able to reach out and help people through the retreats, through the podcast and everything.
Yeah.
We kind of have kind of gone off the topic of health careers, so to speak, but I think that this is still equally important because now it's like once you're in a stressful career, how do you
Right.
take care of yourself? And especially for people who want to go into something related to health and wellness, it's really important for them to be taking care of themselves
Right.
as well.
Because with those, if a person is, well, no matter what aspect of a career a person has, but if you're dealing with people as part of your career, then there is the issue of compassion fatigue, where you're wanting to give so much to the other person and you take on that person's energy. Then it is something definitely to consider. How do you take care of yourself when you're dealing with these difficult, cases or patient situations? It is important to know how to step back so that you're not living and breathing that every day of your life.
And so that you're not brought down by all the
Right.
stress and negativity that you're really your job is kind of to be right in the middle of.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
wow. And then, if for anyone listening who maybe is still in school or something like that, do you have any recommendations for them? Because I know, I think we think a lot about burnout happening while we're in a career, but burnout happens while you're in college. It happens while you're in high school. It's a very real thing, no matter where you're at.
Exactly. Yes. And I wish I could talk to my younger self because I've definitely learned a lot of lessons along the way. But in college is really where I feel like my workaholism started to emerge. So I would say to find an activity as a student that a person can participate in. It's okay to spend time with your friends, maybe one day a week and just, relax. And go to the on-campus gym because a lot of these colleges have really nice recreation centers. Get involved in some kind of sport. Do something outside of studying because it will make the student more well-rounded and they'll meet other people that way. I wish it's something that I would have done, but, at least I can pass that advice to other students now.
Right.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic of college-related stress, and because I see a lot of questions, and a lot of people kind of ask, oh, how do I deal with the stress of being in school? Or how do I
Right.
deal with the stress of exams and papers and deadlines? And that was so long ago for me. I'm kind of and I was kind of the workaholic a bit when I was in school, and I was always wanted to, whatever, stay up all night rewriting my
Right.
paper until I thought it was perfect and whatever. And, and looking back, I'm like, man, I wish somebody would have just told me, hey, don't kill yourself trying to get through college because that's just the beginning
Exactly.
of life. And interestingly enough, I feel like real life has not been as stressful as college was. Some days there's definitely real stressful
Right.
days and you got bills and all these things, and those can be really stressful. But in terms of being ultimately at your highest level of being stressed out every single day of your life, college, I think was
Right.
more stressful than my daily life is now.
Yeah.
I can't speak to law school. I'm sure that was even more.
Yeah, that was stressful. That was next level stressful.
Yeah, no kidding. But do you have any maybe words of wisdom, so to speak, for for those who might be listening who are maybe still in one of those stressful schooling type situations?
I would say now colleges and law schools they've evolved so much since when I attended, and they offer so many activities for students to get involved and, away from the number of hours that they're studying. I would say, try to find some way to get involved in activity on campus. Also sleep. Don't stay up all night. People are going to do it anyway, but I wish I would have taken the time to enjoy the college environment more than I did, because I feel now that I didn't because I just spent so much time focusing on doing well academically as a student that I didn't really take the time to enjoy the experience. So I would say try to find something outside of studying to do.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. These colleges now are even taking, trips to hiking trips, do something like that, There's something different that you wouldn't normally do, because you may not have that type of experience when you start working, not initially anyway.
Right. And like you said earlier, getting to meet different people. And,
right.
I just think about all of the different things that I learned just from the different people that I met, and sometimes you maybe even like discover what ends up being your life's calling, so to speak.
True.
Like almost accidentally. A lot of times I hear people that are, there's all this stress around like, what do I do? What am I going to be? I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I don't know what to go into. I don't know what to study. And that's an overwhelming feeling of just like not knowing. And I think back to myself, when I was in college, I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Right.
And then I, kind of would get interested in this or interested in that. And for a while so I was an English major, and then I got really interested in biology. And so I have a minor in biology. I didn't, basically my parents were like, if you want to stay and finish a double major, then you can pay for it. And I was like, oh gosh. So I'm very grateful to them for paying for my school. But so I had thought like, I want to do medical writing. That makes perfect sense. Like I'm interested in health and wellness, and I have a writing background. And so I actually went to this convention. It was like the American Medical Writers Association or something.
I've heard of it.
And, anyways, it was really cool, and all the people were super nice. But then basically what I learned is that the only thing medical writers do is work for pharmaceutical companies. And I was like, well, that's the opposite of what I want to do.
Right.
Like, but again, it was just kind of this really interesting thing that like I would have never known, that even existed if it wasn't for the people that I met in school, and then B, going to that conference and meeting a bunch of people who were in the middle of a medical writing career, and they were so sweet and so helpful. But that was just such a powerful experience for me to kind of get an idea of what it would be like to be in that career. And, and of course for me, I kind of learned that like, maybe this isn't where I want to go into, because I'm more interested in like the creative thing and like helping people one-on-one, as opposed to like working for a big corporation where I'm just kind of writing a lot of things that like aren't really going to be read by people, or you're like writing the insert that comes in the medication that like no one really reads, even though they maybe should. But that was like definitely a very like important experience for me. And so just like as an idea, for people that you start kind of just opening up your horizons and finding different ways to because I actually wrote a little like letter to the dean of my college, and they paid for me to go to that conference and stuff. And I was like, because I was really sure that's what I wanted to do for my career.
Until you went.
But anyways, just, like if you reach out to your professors or your school, and of course larger schools are going to be different. I was at a little private college, so that was probably why I was able to make that happen. But yeah, I just think there's so much out there for people, and just having that willingness to maybe come out of your comfort zone a little bit to learn new things. Because a lot of times there's that feeling like, oh, I have to choose from all the careers that I know exist.
Right.
But what about all the things you don't even realize exist yet? And I think that that's really where you can start to discover your true passion.
Right.
You know, what truly drives you.
And you just made me think of another suggestion for people, students, or anyone who's even thinking of a career change, is that for students right now is that there is an association for anything anyone wants to do. And there are usually student memberships attached where a student can join at a lower rate. So that's something I would recommend that students do, and if they can arrange it, to go to an annual conference, and certainly to read the material published by that particular industry association. But that's something that people can do, just maybe get an idea of, okay, what is this possible career about?
Right.
I remember when I started, after I completed yoga teacher training, I would go to different blogging conferences, because I started the Spa Me, which is blogging about wellness destinations here in Austin. And I actually met a student who was there with her travel writing teacher at a college. So I thought that was really, unique, because I never thought about doing that when I was in college. So yeah, to hear your story in there, that made me think of her.
Yeah, and that's so true. You're right. There's an association for everything.
Yeah.
So like, as a great way to kind of just get a little, peek into whatever that area is.
Exactly.
That's definitely a great resource. Whether you're a student or, like you said, an adult who's maybe you're thinking of a new career or something you want to take on the side or whatever. Like, it's a great way to kind of get your feet in the door, so to speak. And,
exactly.
And really, determining, like, is this for me or not? Is this what fulfills me, what I want to start, doing every day? And I think that's the most important thing, is like, you're not going to necessarily be able to just come up with the answer, the solution of what you want to do with your life.
Right.
But when you encounter in your life that thing, like, it. And then you'd be like, oh, here's what I want to do.
Right.
And that's very much how I feel about, like, being a health coach or, being a health and wellness YouTuber, I guess would be like my profession, so to speak. Which I never in a million years, like, would have, if somebody would have told me while I was in college, like, you're going to end up making nutrition videos on YouTube, I would have been like, what's YouTube? So it's just kind of a testament to that, a lot of times that, like, the best path for us, the path where we're going to be happiest, maybe isn't something that we can even see from where we currently are.
Exactly.
But you just kind of, like, follow your heart and your different interests, and then eventually you'll, like, stumble on, that thing for you. And
I agree.
Very cool.
Most certainly.
Well, Sandra, I just want to thank you so much for coming in today, sharing all of this with us. I definitely want to have you back on the program again. Maybe we can even do a virtual retreat.
That
like,
sounds
all
nice.
right, maybe you don't want to make time to go to a retreat, but could we create a retreat experience for you to enjoy in the podcast? I don't know. Something
I like
to think
that.
about.
Yeah, think about it.
Anyhow, thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
I hope that you will join us again soon. Thank you so much for listening, and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.